There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation.
No medication. Honorable members, order. Order. Honorable members. The only item on today's order paper is questions addressed to the President. There are 4 supplementary questions on each question. Parties have given an indication of which questions their members wish to pose a supplementary question. Adequate notice was given to parties for this purpose. This was done to facilitate participation of members who are connecting to the sitting through the virtual platform. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized by the presiding officer. In allocating opportunities for supplementary questions, the principle of fairness, amongst others, has been applied. If a member who is supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technological difficulties, the party whip on duty will be allowed to ask the question on behalf of their member. When all the supplementary questions have been answered by the President, we will proceed to the next question on the order paper. The first question has been asked by the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker. Honorable members, having said Honorable Speaker, the debt that is owed to ESCOM by our municipalities, as well as government departments, stands at more than 50 billion rand. We have made it clear that non-payment for services is unacceptable and have taken a number of steps to ensure that payment of these debts is recovered. For this reason, we have established a multidisciplinary revenue committee, and ESCOM is part of this committee, to address payment of debt to the utility by municipalities and various other organs of state. To assist municipalities across our country to pay what they owe ESCOM, the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure pays the service charges and property rates for its properties on behalf of client departments. For the month of September 2022, and as an example, the department paid 575 million rand for property rates and municipal services, and processed invoices to the value of 51 million rand to ESCOM. Where there are disputes, as there often are, the department pays what is not disputed and engages the municipalities for amounts and accounts that are disputed. The department has made significant progress on the reconciliation, the verification, and the settling of debts that are owed to municipalities. Because of its concurrent function, the department coordinates reports from provincial public works departments on a quarterly basis to verify if the public works sector pays its municipal debts. Where there are challenges, the department engages with established provincial forums with municipalities to resolve disputed accounts. In conclusion, regular engagements are taking place with the relevant departments and various treasuries to resolve all outstanding debt. The Department of Cooperative Governance and the South African Local Government Associations are part of these consultations that are ongoing for amounts that may be incorrectly reported. So this is an ongoing process, and we are hoping that it will continue to gain traction and result in a situation where less and less municipalities, as well as government departments and entities, owe less money to ESCOM. Thank you, honorable members.
I thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition. You may be seated, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I'm glad that you feel that non-payment is unacceptable, Mr. President. Because I don't need to tell you how the public feels about the outrageous attempts by government to expand the ministerial handbook in order to grant even more free perks to the extremely well-paid ministers of your cabinet. And by now, I would hope that you know just how furious South Africans are, and they have every reason to be so. Remember, this gift of unlimited free electricity and water came on top of the extremely generous perks that ministers are already pampered with. It includes 20 million rand spent on vehicles during the lockdown period and 2.6 million spent on generators at ministers' homes so that they don't have to feel the effects of their own failed policies. Given this justified public outrage, and given your own insistence, and you've repeated it today, that users pay for the electricity, it's surely right that the members of your cabinet should pay back any additional financial benefits they receive in the 6 months between April, when the new handbook was snuck in, and last month, when you hastily retracted it. Mr. President, have you instructed your cabinet ministers to pay back the money? Thank you.
Well, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The process of the reconciliation of all these amounts is underway. And it was also underway when we looked at the various processes or costs that have to be carried, firstly by the state and also by individual ministers. So this process is underway. I'm not able to say now whether it has reached conclusion. And when I withdrew the handbook, it was really with the view to having this matter properly processed. We have a situation now where the salaries of public representatives is determined by an independent body. And it occurred to me that an issue such as this one also would need, once it is properly processed, to be properly examined by an independent body, because all of us who tend to determine these benefits are essentially insiders. And therefore you need an independent body that could examine all these. So I'm in the process of examining this and seeing how best a process can be put in place. A process that will lead to a measure of equity and fairness, not only to the people of our country, but also to the incumbents. And it is correct that that process should be undertaken, as we did when we started determining the remunerations of all of us as public representatives through an independent body that is chaired by a judge. So the work is underway, and once it has reached fruition, we should be able to tell you all exactly how we want it to be handled. Thank you.
I thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable K.D. Mahlatsi.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for the compendious response. President, the focus on the negative impact of load shedding has been mainly from an economic point of view without a substantial focus on some of the social implications, such as how it will negatively impact learner performance during and the current examination period, how it interrupts food preparations, while the safety of citizens is also in high risk due to darkness, which criminals are also taking advantage of. What mitigating interventions are in place to cushion the poor who would not have other alternative energy resources or temporary lighting and source of energy, which is crucial to sustaining livelihoods during power cuts, for security, for learners to study during these particular interruptions? Honorable President, in your response, it will be also important to give a message of hope to learners who have just started their matric examinations, including TVETs and university students whom will be soon starting their exams. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
The Honorable the President. Thank you, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The issue of load shedding is a challenge and a problem to all of us, collectively as South Africans. And I would say that it isn't correct that we only focus on the economic side or businesses. We do also focus on the hardships that are imposed on the people of South Africa. And to this end, we've taken a number of measures and steps to address the challenges, for instance, that are faced by our hospitals, our health centers, who, whenever there is load shedding, it interrupts their work, and dangerously so, because sometimes it happens during operations and other various intricate processes that take place in hospitals. When it comes to schools or centers of education, they are so widespread. We've got some 25,000 schools, some 25,000 universities, and a number of TVET colleges. Whilst we want ESCOM to safeguard a number of places where there is a gathering of people involved in particular functions, it is difficult to say that we will safeguard or we will come up with immediate alternative measures for each of the 25,000 schools. We continue to address the challenge of load shedding through a variety of ways, and we are hopeful that as we move on to implement the measures that I will talk about in the next question, we will be able to see some success. We do focus on the poor of our country, even during difficult periods of load shedding. And you will all know, honorable members, the extent to which government has gone to ensure that those who are indigent are able to get some measure of assistance from the state. And to date, we've got some 2 million such who are assisted by the state. When it comes to the positive message that one can give to learners, I was in the Eastern Cape and had the pleasure of seeing those young learners who are going to write their exams, and I encourage them and I encourage them to be focused as they go into their exams. And I said to them they should ensure that they write as effectively as possible so that they can be successful in their exams. They were very positive. I was rather pleased that young people are going into these exams fearless, hoping that they are going to succeed. And that is the positive disposition that we want to see amongst our learners. And I would say that even at university level, I happened to be at the University of Fort Hare and interacted with some students there who are getting ready for their exams. And the same positivity was exuded. And I was rather pleased that we've got a new generation of young South Africans who are looking forward to the future positively, and even as they enter a difficult period of their own exams. So I encourage all the young people in our country who are currently writing exams to be positive and hope for the best results. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I thank the Honorable the President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable W. Wessels.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, the Premier of Gauteng recently tweeted that he calls on central government to take over the outstanding debt of Soweto to Eskom. Given the dire fiscal position of the state currently, does the President agree with this stance? And if so, how will this affect our fiscal position and how will we manage this? But also, given the fact that municipal debt, not only of Soweto, is currently out of control at 35 billion rand, how is this situation going to be handled to balance our fiscal position, but also save Eskom and also manage the fact that municipalities and residents can't afford to pay that outstanding debt? I thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. One can understand where the Premier is coming from. It's an aspirational wish that it would be good if that were to be done. Now, at the same time, we've got to balance this aspirational wish with other considerations. The first is that South Africans must pay for the services that they use. The user pay principle does need to be observed by all of us, largely because as the state carries quite a big burden and a heavy one. When you look at our budget, the social support of our budget is way over 50%. But at the same time, one understands the hardships that the people, not only of Soweto, but poor people around our country are going through. Prices of nearly everything have gone up. At the same time, we also have to understand Eskom's own position. Eskom is reeling under a huge burden of debt. So when one looks at all those three considerations, one needs to arrive at a balanced conclusion. Firstly, look at the burden on the state, the enormous burden that our people carry, poverty, unemployment, and in some cases, hopelessness. And at the same time, look at the burden that Eskom carries. Now, with all this, I can understand where the Premier comes from, and we therefore need to have a balanced discussion to see how best these problems that, yes, our people in Soweto and a number of other places. I mean, there are many municipalities that owe huge amounts of money to Eskom. And that is under discussion. and we seeking to find ways of addressing municipal debt. Debts can be written off, but sometimes there needs to be conditions under which debts can be written off. And it happens all over the world. And in this case as well, discussions therefore need to be entered into to see how we balance everything. So let me say the Premier is not mad, and our people's needs are recognized, and the burden on the state should also be recognized. So if we can take all these into consideration, I'm confident we'll have a very good outcome. Thank you very much.
I thank you, the Honorable the President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable NLS Kwangwa.
Ndimas, President. Thank you very much. President, yes, indeed, we need to bring an end to Soweto exceptionalism. There's a lot of noise and deceiving.
Order.
President, I think, you know, when you're talking about undertaking and maintenance, it's going to solve load shedding in the short term. But as you have government taken a decision to try and reform the entity in order to streamline its operations, you said, for an example, in 2019, because you're trying to address issues of energy in the country in the long term, you said separating the ESCOM's divisions into separate units allows each entity to source funding on its own merits. In this regard, I think recently the entity implemented separate financial statements. Our concern, President, is that ESCOM has been able to go to the financial markets to source funding on the basis of a strong balance sheet because it was made up of consolidated financial statements. Once you break up the entity, do you not run the risk of having three entities with very weak balance sheets, meaning ESCOM might not be able to source funding from the financial markets in the private sector, which will then create a situation where ESCOM will perpetually depend on the states for its resource needs, or the taxpayer rather. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you, Honorable Member. The next, that actually brings us to Honorable Members. Yes, it is the President. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I apologize
Thank you.
for rising before you gave me permission. Ndimasia ribongkwangu. Ndoba ndisa zwidivi uri ba kono amba luvenda. Lori buwanga manda. Ndoba gudisa na zwingwe za Chivenda. Honorable Nkwankwa, that's a very good question, and I really appreciate it. The process of restructuring ESCOM into the three entities indeed is in the end going to make the financing of ESCOM a lot easier, because the balance sheet, yes, will be streamlined into three entities. But remember, one of the proposals that we've put forward, which we still need to properly synchronize with where we want to go, is that ESCOM Holdings will be the holding company, and its statements will consolidate the statements of the three entities. And for instance, in distribution, ESCOM is not going to be the sole distributor. So that'll be taken account of as well in your financials. And I do believe that the various entities, the sums of the whole at the ESCOM level, are going to lend themselves to positioning ESCOM in a more positive way rather than in a less positive way. When you disaggregate all this, you'll be able to see how the divisions are functioning and how the separate entities themselves are functioning. Others will function better than the others, but the consolidation is going to be quite beneficial to the whole. So whilst you may fear that it will weaken ESCOM's position, I do believe that it will enhance it. But in the end, what it is going to do, as we have said, it is going to lighten the monopoly position that ESCOM has, particularly in view of its own financial challenges. Much as Treasury has announced and will be setting out more clearly in the February budget how much of the debt is going to be taken up, ESCOM will still remain indebted. And so therefore, we want ESCOM to be stronger financially so as to enable it to embark on further expansion processes, because ESCOM in the end is going to remain the mainstay of our energy generation as well as transmission entity. So the fears you express are matters that obviously we have to address, and as we move forward, we'll be able, in a very transparent manner, as you've already seen the statements, be able to put forward the various propositions as we move on. So for now, fear not. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President. That brings us to the last supplementary question. And the next question now is question number 20. And it has been asked by the Honorable J.S. Malema on the virtual platform.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and honorable members. The causes of the recent extensive load shedding that we've been experiencing are both structural as well as operational. Among the structural challenges are the fact that there has been insufficient investment at the ESCOM level in new generation capacity or new generation built that was needed 2 decades ago. And this has resulted in the end in a national capacity shortage of between 4,000 and 6,000 megawatts. I have articulated this in the past in this very house. This situation obviously was made worse by the delay in building Kusile and Medupi, the faulty designs that has accompanied that whole build, state capture and corruption, and the loss of experienced staff, but also the halt of maintenance at ESCOM. I recently heard that real serious maintenance had been halted for quite a number of years. At operational level, and as a result of these challenges, power stations were run very hard to their maximum capacity with poor reliability on maintenance and neglect of midlife refurbishments. Now, with respect to the position of the Group Chief Executive Officer of ESCOM, the Group CEO was appointed on a 5-year contract in January 2020. The Group CEO reports to the ESCOM board, which conducts performance reviews against agreed targets. The new ESCOM board was appointed, as we all know, on the 1st of October of this year, and will be given the space, and should be given the space really, to assess what needs to be done to improve efficiency of the existing plant and effectiveness of the management and operators at all levels. And this is a process I believe that they have started to embark on or will be embarking on soon. Now, the new board has the skills, the experience, as well as the expertise to undertake a thorough assessment of current executive leadership at ESCOM, and take whatever steps they consider necessary to address areas of weakness, and they must be given the space to do so. As announced in the State of the Nation address in February and in an address to the nation on the 25th of July of this year, a range of initiatives are currently underway as a matter of urgency to address the load shedding that we are going through right now. This work, which is being managed by the National Energy Crisis Committee, which is lodged in the presidency and coordinates the various departments, includes ensuring that the units at Kusile are brought into commercial operation and expediting what needs to be expedited at Medupi. The implementation of reliable maintenance through a focus on quality maintenance, but also the recruitment of experienced staff. And we did say at some stage we are going to even bring back some of those old power station managers who not only know the power stations, but who know the sounds of the machines that operate at those power stations. And a number of them who had gone to various places around the world have indicated a great willingness to come back and be utilized. And also, we're focusing on the use of original equipment manufacturers. We're also focusing on 6 priority stations where the maximum benefit can be achieved by improved performance. And these are Kendall, Majuba, Duba, Mata, Tutuka, as well as Kusile. Coordinating efforts also with law enforcement agencies to address sabotage, theft, and fraud continues to disrupt the operations of power stations. A lot of progress is being made in this regard, and we're pushing back the frontiers of fraud and corruption. The other one is addressing the ESCOM debt, which we've spoken about, as well as ensuring that we implement the just energy transition. Now, this work is obviously taking place alongside efforts to accelerate initiatives to add more generation capacity to the grid through gas, solar, wind, and hydro. And all this is part of our mixed energy plan, and we want to see all these things coming into play so that all these initiatives help us to address the load shedding that we are going through right now. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable J.S. Malema.
Thank you very much, Speaker and Mr. President. Let's organize Khalabi. I can go Rakhan, Mamutan. And I let Yago Reska Khan. Lara Vedi Puchisho come for the Puchishenga. The Logel di Bolelancha or Ratarata Leya. I see the Puchisho Jagri Puchishi. Got from Poyo Holm Khala. Jobuchichor Munol Huam Yirle was CEO. Au woni wena kama twa litirelo tse di beng gona mo ke ileng tsa ba tsa di gore du bushe o ile dina ga mabapi wa tshwanela go re o kgaola leeto la la dina ga mabapi lo yo thola mogekolo la tlhokofetseng kwa England wa boya mo gae ge o bua mo gae o buša ke taba tsa gore dialo ba re go senyegile ga o sana mabone mo gae ke le swifi o ntshofetse wa palla le go o boloka mogekolo wa geno wa lekgowa kwa England ka jwalo rena re be re le mo leswiswing ke wena o bua gore no batho ba le ba šetse ka gara leswiswi re ke boele morago wa palla go boloka mogekolo wa geno ga botse jwalo taba tšewe di o tshwentše di jwalo taba tša di a ro kgaola leeto la naga mabapi o boe Wena munno a lekgwa mono re wa palelwa na? Ka gore monna o ba le company ya o dia maswana le o tsentša dijo ka gara mapetlelo a palela ke maswana le dijo tša ka gara mapetlelo. Jwale o mpotše gore na taba ya mohuto moso ya bothata-thata ya motlakase o tlo e kgona jwang ka gore o šetše a bontšhitše gore wa palelwa monno. Bolelang nnete
Okay,
re a
just a-
palelwa ke
Okay,
monno.
just
So
a point of
president,
privilege. Honorable Malema, just a point
Yeah.
of privilege on my side, please. Technology, technicians, I don't know what's happening. There's no interpretation whatsoever here. Will you please assist us? No, Niamva, but a quarter of you or third Niamva. Oh,
I'm speaking a
wait.
South African language, by the way.
Yes, you are right. I agree. But all I'm saying is, can you please assist us with interpretation? Thank you, Honorable Malema.
Thank you. So, President, se ke se botšišang ke gore, and at least ka bolela taba ya gore boto ya reng, boto ya ra ke botšiša ka boto. Boto e tsene lena jwalo ka shareholder ya mola Eskom le na le maatla gore monna o a di tsona lena mola monna o a tšang setulo. Le bona a khotsofatšana ka gore le motho a ka ba le kontraka mengwaga e mehlano. Ngwaga ka ngwaga re di a re lebelela gore na kontraka e re mo fileng yona o a dia mošomo o re o nyaka o ra o die na. Monno a ona le mošomo lo motho o re mo iretseng ona wa o diang ga botse ntle le gore o tsene kwa.
Honorable Malema, you've gone way beyond your time.
Honorable Chair.
No,
sorry,
Mara, you interrupted
Shishi,
me.
You've gone way beyond your time.
No,
On
you
the
have
other
interrupted
hand,
me, Chair.
I would like the IT people please to sort out the issue of translation. I
Chair,
hear
you
you
have
saying they
interrupted
should
me.
proceed.
Can I conclude my
No,
question?
man, go interrupted just for a minute, please.
No, I'm the last part.
No,
please.
Ntate man. No, Ntate,
No, I won't
please.
put that's why now I'm killing
Ntate Malema, dula fatshe hona jwale, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Ntate. Honorable, you know, I don't take kindly when people say, please proceed, allow him to continue. Because I definitely know sitting here, not even 2/3 of this house understands or understood what the Honorable Malema said. So please just allow me to preside, please, with all due respect. Thank you very much. Now, we are following up with the technology people and we are hoping that they will resolve the problem. Now, the Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, ke a o dumediša le wena Sello Malema, Ntate Sello Malema. Ke leboga potšišo ya gago. Mara ha o no mametse botse. If you were listening very carefully, you would have heard that I did address the question. Much as you don't want me to talk about processes that need to be embarked upon to assess anybody's performance. From a CEO to a manager, their performance needs to be assessed. And that assessment needs to be embarked upon by the properly constituted body. Now, one of the reasons we have boards is that managements of entities, be they state entities or even in the commercial world, account to boards. And in this case, it is precisely the process that has ensued. Now, you may not be very pleased with that type of process, but that is the most fair process to anybody indeed, and that is the best process that I know, that a board that has been appointed should be the one that does that. Now, as there's no state entity that has had as many CEOs as Eskom. And if you start counting them, they are more than 15 or even close on to 20 in the 28 8 years of our democracy. Now, we need to have a proper assessment of the performance of everybody at ESCOM. Just as we also need to have an assessment of the efficiency of our various power stations. And that process, as I said, is underway. Now, I'd like us to allow the board to embark on this process, and they will be able to brief the shareholder what their own assessment is. And it is then that we will see how best they propose the matter should be handled. And I hope you do find this satisfactory. ESCOM has gone through enormous challenges and difficulties. And I've often said that, and even as I met the many managers of power stations, and I said, let us give them the support that they need so that they can do their work. Where they fail, clearly action does need to be taken, but that is now a board matter. I hope Wakwishisha and Rekano Bulela Kayon, Rekopane Qualisutu Nalwe, Empara Hono Bulela Kayon, Naguemar Copana Rekahono Bulela, Rubela Cassivenda Legassi paid. Merita Hono Quishishan Havoods, Markialebo Hamai Kutisha. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable the President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable J. Chabalala.
Thank you so much, President. Dimasiare, members of the President, while the question was asking about CEO, I thought maybe it's quite important for us to say we welcome the new board as led by Mr. Mpomakwana, a man of good credibility, who has sustained SAFCOL, who's been the board chairperson of SAFCOL, a SAFCOL that would have received unqualified audit opinion, and who would have been self-sufficient, a state entity that we're very proud of. So we wish him luck with the entire team, President. We've got confidence in him that he will bring back what we really need. Honorable President, there are sections of society, particularly small business and low-income households, that draw morbid satisfaction with the issue of load shedding because it affects household electric appliances as a result in foregone revenues for small businesses, among other things. While these sections of society, Mr. President, had hoped that the Minister of Finance in his MTBPS would have announced the sustainable solution to address ESCOM debt, which currently denies the utility a space to conduct its reliability maintenance to minimize load shedding. This was not the case. Its announcement was really of this solution, Mr. President, was postponed to next year, 2023. Therefore, Mr. President, the most important question is that small business and low-income households that are loathsome about the issue of load shedding would really appreciate your response to these matters, Mr. President, but to also say what measures are in place to ensure that the postponement of sustainable solution to address ESCOM debts does not affect the space in ESCOM.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Chabalala, thank you for the question. Coming to the announcement that was made by the Minister of Finance, indeed, the finality of everything will be properly announced in February. The Minister has signaled government's intentions with regard to supporting ESCOM. And I do believe that that signaling has contributed to the re-rating of ESCOM as an entity by the financial markets. And clearly the issue of giving support to small businesses and indeed large businesses as well as our households is a matter that is of great importance. And it is top of mind in the minister's mind as well. And it's a matter, obviously, that needs to be looked at within the broader scheme of our fiscal processes. We were not able to have it dealt with right now. And it is a matter that in the course of our fiscal architecture, in its totality should also be addressed, particularly as we address and fund the restructuring and the repositioning of ESCOM, because ESCOM needs continuous funding. During the load shedding period, ESCOM has been burning quite a lot of money, burning diesel, and which runs into billions of rands. And that has to be funded. And ESCOM, with the debt that it's carrying now, finds that that burden continues to increase. And it is for this reason that the state or the government felt that we should make an intervention and support ESCOM. And in the end, supporting ESCOM would be supporting the people of South Africa as a whole. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, the Honorable the President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable E.M. Buthelezi.
Honorable Speaker, we'll take it from the side. He's not connected. He's having network issues. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, I think my question is very relevant now, considering your response to the previous speaker. The amendment of Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulation Act to exempt embedded generation project of up to 100 megawatts from having to apply for a license allows for more private sector investment in electricity generation capacity without any public funding, with the aim of reducing the risk of load shedding. Given that, according to the economist, the economy is taking a severe strain due to the worsening breakdowns at ESCOM and marching the Republic into a technical recession. What challenges have been experienced in the private sector in generating electricity capacity? Thanks.
I thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The private sector has leapt up to the opportunity of generating electricity. Whilst at the beginning, the applications seemed to be few, they have now been increasing by leaps and bounds. And we're finding that a number of companies are coming forward, from your heavy metal and mining companies to a whole range of others. So I would not say that they are experiencing challenges. The good thing, as you correctly say, is that their generation is not going to be funded by the public. They are going to be funding the generation, and any excess will then be pumped into the grid. And that is something that we should welcome, because lightening the burden on ESCOM with regard to funding further and more generation is an important one. Not that ESCOM is going to stop generating electricity, as other people have thought that we're weakening ESCOM in this regard. We actually even strengthening ESCOM so that more electricity can be generated. As our economy grows, even at the paltry levels at which it is growing, it requires more and more generation. So the private sector is going to be filling in a very important gap as far as I'm concerned. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable A.M. Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, I had the opportunity the other day of watching a video of a gentleman who says he is the most skilled and expert on energy in South Africa, more than anyone else. And he's of the opinion that you will not solve the problem at ESCOM, and even your alternative energy that you're talking about will not work. And he talks about the leadership that we have currently at ESCOM, including the board. And he's of the opinion that unless you deal with the actual leadership and skills and ensure that those people at ESCOM acquire those skills, you are not going to solve the problem. And the focus on alternative energy supply is equally not going to solve the problem of this country. Could you kindly tell us why you are convinced, Mr. President, that the process you're now following will indeed solve the ESCOM challenges once and for all? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Imam, I'm always ready, willing, and prepared to meet people who characterize themselves as the best, as the only ones who have the solutions. Those are the people that I'd like to meet, because they obviously, I say we don't have the monopoly. I would think that all of us seated here, we don't have the monopoly on everything that is best to be done in any endeavor. But meeting somebody like that would really be not even a blessing. It would be something that just blows my mind. So I would like to meet them. But having said that, and not seeking to be critical of the gentleman that you were talking about, I mean, some of the things that the gentleman is saying are true. We need skilled people. We need people with great knowledge and expertise, and obviously he has more than anyone else. So at ESCOM, we are focusing on improving skills. We are focusing on bringing the skills in-house. There were many people who were very experienced at ESCOM who left years ago. And as I said earlier, we're seeking to bring those back. Now, the renewable programs have been proven to be to have great efficacy in many parts of the world. I was recently in Saudi Arabia and had an opportunity also of listening to people from that part of the world who were able to tell us or me that they are now more and more becoming reliant on this great endowment that Providence has given them, which is the sun. And it's being utilized to great effect. I was in the Northern Cape some 2 weeks or so ago, and I had the opportunity of going to a power station that uses the CPS process, which is utilizing mirrors that are directed towards the sun. And the sun then beams its rays into a container that then generates steam and then turns the turbines. And the electricity available factor is 85%. Whereas with wind and solar, we get slightly less. So these are technologies that are being developed all the time. And a number of countries in the US, in the Middle East, are gravitating in that direction. So renewable energy, much as people may think, does not give us base load. I found that the CPS system does contribute to base load, and it's a process that we should look at. And if you recall, our integrated resource plan says that we should have a mixed energy architecture to be able to use wind, sun, solar, hydro, even nuclear, as well as gas and the coal that we are also using now. So it does not exclude renewables. So renewables are very much part of the whole architecture. And I don't think it would be wise, even if in the eyes of the world's expert that you met or listened to, believes that we should discard renewables. We are not ready to do that. We are committed to a particular path, which gives us optionality across all sources of energy. And I think we should stick to that path. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable President, honorable members, I'm informed that there is interpretation on the virtual platform. There are capacity challenges, re-availability of all language here right now. This is caused by the fact that the National Assembly and the NCOP are sitting simultaneously, and they are both on hybrid, which means that there must be 4 interpreters at any given time per language. I'm now I've directed the administration to attend to this matter. So please bear with us, honorable members. I thank you. Honorable members, we are now on question number 21, and it has been asked by the Honorable R.M. Semenya. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Infrastructure Fund is an important part of our economic stimulus and recovery plan. This is because the substantial contribution that infrastructure investment can make to economic growth is quite substantial. The Infrastructure Fund provides government support for the co-financing of projects that blend private and public capital resources. This is intended to encourage greater involvement of concessional lenders in our public infrastructure effort and build a credible pipeline of social transformation projects over the short term to the medium term. Government has committed 100 billion to the Infrastructure Fund. The fund will use government's investment to leverage almost 1 trillion rand worth of infrastructure investment over the next 10 years through the blended finance initiative. The fund itself aims to support projects in a variety of sectors, be they energy, water, transport, digital and social infrastructure. The Infrastructure Fund has packaged a number of what I would call catalytic infrastructure projects, currently to the value of 21 billion rand. Of these, projects worth 2.6 billion have been approved by National Treasury's budget facility for infrastructure, with the remainder to be sourced from project owners' equity and a significant component of debt. Social infrastructure projects approved for funding include student housing infrastructure and social housing as well. Phase 1 of the Olifantspoort and Ebenezer Dam supply project was also approved. The Infrastructure Fund has submitted 8 projects for the next big window of the budget facility for infrastructure. Now, these projects are in the areas of water and sanitation, transport, mixed-use developments, as well as accommodation for students. The fund has played an important role in packaging social infrastructure projects, such as this Gauteng Schools program, which aims to design and construct schools in the province. The fund is collaborating with government departments and institutions to expand blended finance project pipeline. Projects that could form part of this pipeline would stimulate socio-economic development through investment that will enable effective wastewater treatment plants, efficient cross-border trade and movement of people. Now, the fund has taken some time to get going, but it is now proving to be an important driver of new investment in social infrastructure. And I do believe, as I said when I announced the foundation or the formation of this fund, that it is going to contribute greatly. And already At its beginning stages, it is proving to be the case. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
To the Honorable the President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable R.M. Semenya.
Thank you,
may take a
Mr.
seat,
President.
Mr. President.
The answer. Your Excellency, building a capable developmental state underpin the 7 priorities of the 6th administration so as to address the weaknesses of the state capability and corrupt practices which led to the weakness in efficiently implementing project infrastructure development. The success of the infrastructure funds is dependent on the success of the project delivery and the capability to efficiently implement project, particularly when financed through blended finance, which includes debt contractual agreements. My follow-up question, Mr. President, is how will the government ensure that all implementing agents has adequate capacity and technical capability to effectively manage the project cycle to improve the infrastructure development within the project scope? I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Semenya, very, very briefly, one of the areas that we focus attention on, particularly after I appointed Professor Hossein Suramokhopa, who is a civil engineer, is that we should focus initially on project preparation. We found that to be a great weakness in government, that many projects are not properly packaged and there is very little proper preparation. And when you don't have proper preparation, that is often done by your experts, your engineers, your accountants, and all those type of skilled people, you find that in the end, you embark on a project, there are cost overruns, faulty designs, and a whole range of other anomalies. So project preparation has been an area of focus, and I'm really pleased that we were able to find a person who's an engineer, bring them into government, into the presidency, working together with the Ministry of Public Works and Infrastructure to focus on that. And through that, they've been able to attract skilled people and even train young people who are being educated in the variety of disciplines like that. So I do believe that we are now better prepared to embark on major infrastructure programs or projects because the preparatory work has been really well packaged. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable the President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, talk about new infrastructure means very little if we can't maintain existing infrastructure. Now, Durban, for example, is facing an economic and environmental disaster. I visited eThekwini last week, and 17 of their 22 wastewater treatment plants are not working. 80% of the sewage pump stations are not working. This means that raw sewage is literally pouring into the city's rivers, onto the beaches, killing ecosystems, and into the sea. And it's polluting the beaches and the harbor. Now, most of the major beaches in Durban are now closed and are unlikely to open in time for the very important summer tourist season. International rugby matches have had to be cancelled, and there's doubt over next year's Duzi Canoe Marathon. Durban desperately needs its tourists in summer season, where it can make sure its hotels and restaurants and the economy can keep moving. The threat of the E. coli infection is going to prevent that. Now, clearly, eThekwini cannot fix this mess. 6 months later, they're still blaming the floods. And so I must ask you today, Mr. President, what is your government's plan to try and prevent this environmental and economic catastrophe in Durban?
I thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Steenhuisen, for pointing out. No, I know you're not an expert. For pointing out the challenges that eThekwini is facing, and specifically Durban. But let me say, it's not only Durban. It's a number of other places also around the country where wastewater treatment plants have broken down to a point where sewage just runs in our streets, yes, into the rivers, and finally, as the rivers empty into our seas and our beaches, impacting negatively also on not only tourism, but business generally, because the more our cities and towns are not properly maintained, the more investors will just flee and not find our cities attractive. Now, this challenge in Durban has been identified, and I've discussed it quite extensively with the mayor and the deputy mayor as well, as also with the premier. And as I said, it extends beyond just Durban. The important thing is that the realization is there and the will to address it is also there. What we need to harness and to bring together is the skills that need to be brought to bear to address this challenge. And I can give you a good example of another municipality, which I've been given quite a bit of information on in the Free State, Machabeng, where their wastewater treatment plants had also broken down, many of them, and I just forget the number, but it was well over 80%. And all that the new mayor needed to do was to bring in skills, to lay out the funding, to ensure that the funds will be used properly. The municipality had lost skills. It no longer had engineers. It no longer had the technically well-trained people. And what he has sought to do is to employ those skills, bring them in-house, and get them to focus on addressing those challenges. Now, you will find that this is a common problem in many parts of our country. And this is now a reality that we have to address. The beginning parts of your question was that we've got to focus on maintenance. And that's absolutely true. And even as we look at our infrastructure rebuild, we're focusing on saying, let us maintain the infrastructure that we have. And even as we build new infrastructure, allocate a budget for maintenance. You've got to have a percentage of your budget that will be focusing on maintenance. So you're absolutely right. And these are areas that are being focused on. And I would like to say not only for Durban, but have to be focused on throughout the country. And thank you for bringing this to the attention of the House as well. Thank you very much.
Honorable the President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable N.V. Mente.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Mr. President, the immediate and urgent social infrastructure development that South Africans, especially the impoverished communities, need right now is water, electricity, and sanitation infrastructure. Our people drink water with animals, do not have affordable and dependable electricity, and their streets are lined with raw sewage. I challenge you, Mr. President, to go to Bloemhof, Wadrin, Likwatimane local municipality in the Northwest to see how our people open the door only to step into the raw sewage, and their children are always sick. In fact, this is the case in all Black townships and villages in this country. What's even worse, Mr. President, with what you are saying of Machabeng, All municipalities in South Africa do not have capacity to maintain or build infrastructure. Yet you always throw around big figures of social infrastructure development. And this does not translate to any quality service to our people. And yet lately, Mr. Direte confessed in Parliament that indigent households are not even 50% of those that were supposed to be receiving free electricity. And this is because your municipalities are not registering indigent. So are they not providing water for free in our communities? Now, Mr. President, what must happen in order for the municipalities to be capacitated and ensuring that they take care of our people, not take care of the elite? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Mentor. You have just really articulated precisely the issue I was seeking to address in relation to a municipality like Machabeng. And indeed, Lekwatimane, the ward that you mentioned, would also fall in that category. And you're also alluding to another major challenge. We do find that many of our municipalities do not register a number of our citizens who are unable to pay on the indigent register. Treasury has budgeted that, yes, the state or government will assist those who are poor, from poor households, those who are not able to pay for water, electricity, and make a meaningful contribution. But I often find that when we interact with our people, they complain about the high costs of this and that. And when you ask them, are you registered on the indigent register? We find that they are not. And yet the municipality should make it their duty to see which households are paying or not paying, and find out the reasons why people are not paying. You seek to know, what are we going to do and what are we doing? Yes, we talk about all these big figures. Yes, we're focusing on social infrastructure. But in the end, as I said, in answering Honorable Steenhuisen's question, it is a question of capacitating our municipalities. And we've admitted that one of the areas of weakness in our state infrastructure or state structure is the local government level, where we do not have the requisite skills that many of our towns, and indeed it is our townships that suffer the most. We do not have those skills, and developing those skills and making sure that those skilled people do stay in those areas. One of the problems and challenges we have is that some of our small towns are not able, to can afford the services of an engineer, and those who are well qualified as engineers often want to be near or in the big cities. So it's a question of competing for those skills and bringing them into your small towns. But at the same time, as we address this, we also have to address another problem, which is corruption that is endemic in a number of these places. And you mentioned taking care of the elite. We find that in a number of places, only a few people almost capture the municipality, are the ones who largely benefit, but that benefit is not commensurate as service providers with the services that they provide. So these are problems that we are aware of, we are addressing on an ongoing basis, and capacity building and capacity enablement is one of the areas of focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable the President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable B.N. Heron.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, President. Mr. President, the spatial inequality is probably one of our most visually obvious legacies of apartheid. The spatial apartheid, or spatial foundation of apartheid, segregation and oppression based on race, plays out in every aspect of our lives. It is the foundation of exclusion, of inequality, and of poverty. And we have failed to address spatial inequality. In fact, over the last 30 years, we've probably perpetuated it. Through our housing program, we've relegated poor, mostly Black South Africans to live on the outskirts of towns and cities in huge suburbs of poverty. SPLUMA, the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act, was meant to address spatial integration, but it has failed. We have failed to deliver a national mandatory inclusionary housing policy. Mr. President, obviously we must address the lack of social infrastructure where people are living, but where people live actually matters. And that's what we need to change. Mr. President, what steps will government take in order to address the perpetuation of spatial inequality and rather move towards integration? Thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Member. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Heron. Thank you very much for that question, which we will in part address in the next following question. The spatial inequality in our country is one of the horrible legacies of apartheid and of our past, because it has to a large extent resulted in the poverty that our people face and the inequality as well. Now, yes, you are right. When we got off the starting blocks of our democracy and started off with providing housing to our people, we started just expanding away from our cities and towns. Instead of densifying, bringing poor people into the city. All over the world, in many places in the world, poor people live inside or near the cities. We have just exacerbated the situation by moving them on outside. And you mentioned a very good concept, that the mandatory inclusivity of spatial planning. And that is precisely what we're now beginning to focus on. With the social housing programs that we've now embarked upon, where we now need to have social housing and build up rather than continue spreading out, it is one of those issues that we now need to address. So densification in the end is the answer. In the end, it is local government. Local governments are the ones who usually own the land in the vicinity of towns. They're the ones who are in charge of town planning. And another problem, of course, skills such as town planning are short and far in between. We just don't have good town planners like the Romans had. The Romans had great town planners. They were able to build cities. And if you look at the development of cities or just civilization, it was around building cities that humanity was able to move forward. Now, we need to do that. We need to bring people back into cities, particularly poor people, and do it through a mandatory inclusivity or inclusionary process of densification. So on that one, you are spot on, and I don't think we'll ever find anybody who disagrees with that. Because the amount of money that people spend on transport, where they spend up to 40, sometimes 50, 60% of their earnings on transport. But not only that, just the hours, the time that they spend in transit just to go to a workplace, and where they actually change modes of transport up to 3 times before they get to work, is totally unacceptable. And we need to turn back this horrible apartheid legacy and make it much more modern and to fit our situation and conditions where we have to address poverty and inequality more effectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable President. Question number 22 has been asked by the Honorable N. Singh, the Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Presidential Climate Commission is really an essential part of our country's response to what we have described as the existential threat to climate change. The commissioners, supported by the Secretariat, make recommendations to government on the implementation of a just transition for our country. The Commission recognizes the high levels of poverty, inequality, and unemployment in our country. They also recognize the intensity of our greenhouse emissions and our economic vulnerability to a global transition to a low carbon economy. This Commission's recommendations to date have therefore focused on enhancing South Africa's commitment to lower emissions through a more ambitious, nationally determined contribution and establishing a framework to guide a just transition. The Commission will now focus on developing an implementation plan for the just transition framework together with all relevant stakeholders and institutions. This will include research work on the net zero pathways for each sector of our economy, local government planning, climate resilient development, and funding the transition journey that we have to embark on. An immediate priority is making recommendations on the energy mix and energy governance to achieve mid-century net zero emission target. These recommendations are due in the first half of 2023. The Presidential Climate Commission has a further function, which is to monitor and to evaluate government performance against the implementation of our climate commitments. The ambitious actions that the Commission has proposed, which have been developed through extensive stakeholder engagement as well as consensus building, will play a significant role in enhancing the effectiveness of our country's response to climate change and the implementation of a just transition. I think all of us look forward to those recommendations that are still in the making to ensure that we navigate our way through a just transition. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, the Honorable the President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable N. Singh.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much, Honorable President, for your response. Now, Honorable President and colleagues, as we are all aware, climate change is having a serious effect on the lives of people, not only in South Africa, but around the world. We see these floods, we see earthquakes, and we see all sorts of damage taking place to society. So we are certainly in a race to transform energy supply around the world, making it cleaner, more efficient, and more reliable for everyone. But at the same time, it must be good for our health, climate, and the economy. Most of our energy in South Africa is derived from fossil fuels, which directly increase climate change and air pollution. And reducing emissions is critical, but so is the breaking of the world's dependence on fossil fuels. Now, Mr. President, you are aware and we are aware that South Africa has been promised billions of rand of investment into the development of South Africa's energy sector. And this money is committed particularly to South Africa's transition to cleaner energy sources. Last year, this program was promised 8.5 billion rand. This year, Germany promised a further 301 million euros. The president of the government of Spain announced that Spain will make available approximately 2.11 billion euros in the coming 5 years
to support the participation of Spanish companies in renewable energy and climate-related projects in South Africa. Now, Honorable President, I think the question and the issue that the Commission is dealing with must be dealt with as expeditiously as possible, because there are fears amongst people that are employed in the coal mining sector and in the coal-based plants that they will lose jobs. What I'd like to know is, are we doing enough as government? And are we going to impose conditionalities on the private sector who want to enter the clean technology market, that there must be aggressive upskilling of those who may be found redundant in the coal firing plants so that they could be employed either by Eskom as Eskom transits to cleaner energy or employed in the private sector. And this will provide a salutary effect on the fears. We cannot have any roadblocks along the way towards cleaner energy. So I'd like to know your view on that, Honorable President. Thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Member. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Singh. What you're articulating is precisely what we're focusing our attention on. Just so that I can just not really correct you, but just give you the real figure. It's not 8.5 billion rand, it's $8.5 billion. So it may sound substantial. The $8.5 billion may sound substantial, but it isn't. It isn't. The World Bank has projected that we will need a couple of trillions of rands to navigate our way through to a proper and just transition. Now, I've been looking very closely even at this offer that has been made. And we are going to discuss it with the Climate Change Commission, because we need to look at it more closely. It was a breakthrough agreement for us as a country. Other countries are lining up. I know Indonesia is lining up, and Egypt and a number of others, to do probably similar, maybe even better deals. So there is a race in the world to capture the funding to address what we have to address, which is our just transition. So there is no other way than to do so. Now, our coal-fired power stations, a number of them are nearing the end of their lives. And as they come to the end of their lives, there needs to be a just transition between that ending, whether it's voluntary or forced upon them, like one of our power stations has reached the end of its life, and we're now transiting rather, to a different form of energy, which is gas. Now, obviously, people will lose jobs. Now, part of the just transition, which is also being championed by trade unions that represent the working people of our country, as well as various stakeholders and civil society organizations, is that we should leave no one behind. And it is for that reason we've adopted as government this rallying call that we should leave no one behind. And as those power stations close down, we must therefore define a pathway for our people so that there must be reskilling, upskilling, and new skills must come to the fore. As new sectors of the economy are then created, particularly in some of those areas. And indeed, that is what we want to focus on. As we close coal mines and as Eskom makes land available in the area for renewable energy, and as new power stations are built, we want to ensure that our people get jobs in new sectors, manufacturing, installation, the steel industry in the area to construct whatever needs to be done, and a whole range of others. And in many parts of the world where they've done this, they have said it's opened up a new world. I was talking to the Prime Minister of Spain, and who was telling me that they embarked on this journey. And it was a scary journey initially, as people now started losing jobs. But government as well as the private sector came to the fore and new jobs were created. Clearly, we cannot stand here and promise that, yes, there will be, jobs for everyone. There are going to be gaps that need to be filled. And this is where things like conditionalities that you're talking about on the key players, which is the private sector, come to the fore. And we need to address precisely those types of challenges. So it's not going to be an easy journey. And I've been saying that even the money that has been put forward, I want to see more grant funding. More grant funding, because some of these power stations are in areas where economic activity other than the power station is sparse or none is not available. And we need to address the needs of our people, so grant funding. And one of the reasons, and I've been talking to a few heads of states in this regard, including President Biden when I saw him, I've been saying, we in the main, particularly in the South, particularly in Africa, we are victims of the damage that your more developed economies caused to the climate. And he admits that. He says, yes, you are right. We are, as we industrialized and pumped, manufacturing and industrialization, we damaged the environment. And therefore, we need to assist those countries, like many countries on our continent, in fact, all of us, including ourselves, who are also a polluter. We are depicted as, I think, the 12th polluter in the world. But our cause of pollution is by no means near what the northern developed economies have done. So that's why we need to have more grant funding, good concessional funding, and the private sector needs to come to the fore. And we should welcome the position that's been taken by a number of governments, including the German government and the Spanish government, who are going to support some of their companies to get into renewables. So the conditionalities then need to come into play. I hope that answers you. Thank you.
I thank you, Honorable the President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable PMP Modise.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Ke a go dumedisa, President. Mr. President, the Presidential Climate Change Commission embraces the concept of social compact in the just energy transition. And government acts as an integrator, also acts as a coordinator and a point of liaison within the social partners towards meaningful contribution towards mitigation and adaptation. Now, Mr. President, the establishment of the Presidential Climate Change Commission, since its establishment rather, what level of successes have government managed to record in terms of ensuring that all stakeholders respond positively and in unison towards the implementation of the climate change mitigation and adaptation plans? What will be the cost of meeting the climate change nationally determined contributions, also known as the NCCs? Thank you very much.
I thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Modise. Thank you very much for the question. You are absolutely right. What we are seeking to do to address climate change is to do it on a consensus building basis. And you're absolutely right that government has to be the coordinator. But we are very fortunate in that right at the beginning, we decided to set up the commission. The commission brings together various role players, from non-governmental organizations to government institutions to the private sector, as well as government and ministers. So we all together in this commission, and we exchange wonderful views. And there are also scientists, people who are well-versed, and some of whom could be world experts, as Honorable Imam was saying, who are so knowledgeable about the sector and who are also broad in terms of the various subsectors of environmental issues and challenges. So all this is brought together through this commission, and its task is really to seek to define a pathway for us to navigate us through the transition, to come up with very clear recommendations on what we need to do. What is the mitigation initiatives that we need to embark upon? And how do we need to adapt? So all that is going to come through their recommendations. What they have done so far is to actually define a very broad framework. They've given us a broad framework, and I'm glad that they're all still sitting together with government, working on all this. What is it going to cost us? As I said, it's going to cost us quite a lot of money. If we look forward to 2050, it's going to amount to trillions of rands. And what we are insisting on is that your more developed economies in Paris promised that they would be able to fund the transition by up to $100 billion a year. Now, they have not lived up to those promises, not at all. They've come forward to say they want to reach agreements on the funding of a number of countries, and we were the first to do so, to get the $8.5 trillion or the offer, because it's still an offer. We still need to number crunch and finalize it. And as it is now, we appointed former Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank, Mr. Daniel Minele. They've crafted a business plan that will help us to address this challenge in part. So that will soon be made public for discussion. And even as it comes out for discussion, it is not the definitive one. It is for discussion and input from various stakeholders, so that our people can make their comments, be very critical, as well as be very constructive. And in the end, we will emerge with a plan that will address our transition. This is possibly, as I said, it's existential for our nation, for our country, and we therefore need to treat it with the seriousness that it deserves, largely because we can see the damage that climate change is causing to various parts of our country. On the east, it's floods. On the west of our country, it's drought. And both these natural occurrences are causing a lot of damage to the livelihoods of people and to our economy. So it's therefore important. So it's going to cost a lot of money. That is why we're going to be focusing, even as we go to COP27 rather, in Egypt, in a few days, I believe, in a week or so. When we go to COP27, we will be seeking to focus on the issue of assistance, the support that we must get, and the mitigation process, and how we are going to adapt. So we are on a path that is going to give rise to a lot of angst and doubt and argument, but we have to embark on this journey together as South Africans. Thank you very much.
I thank you, the Honorable President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, I'm sure you'll agree that if we want to attract this money, that we need to have credibility. And credibility means not talking one thing and walking something else. It means being consistent.
Order, please, order.
Mr. President, last week your finance minister stated that taking over a portion of Eskom's debt will only be on the condition that Eskom agrees to invest in what he called the old reliables, coal, gas, and nuclear. So apart from, I think, it being outrageous that private citizens have to take on Eskom's debt now, the statement is also very revealing because it shows that your government is now determined to prioritize coal, gas, and nuclear at the expense of renewables. It also makes it clear that the commitment and the talk about climate change is hot air. So not only is the government doubling down on more expensive energy options that won't solve South Africa's climate problem or our short-term energy focus, it's also doubling down on fossil fuels. How do you square your commitment to fossil fuels with what you've said today about tackling climate change? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I would like to say to Honorable Steenhuisen, there is no double speak on this. We are committed, and one needs to state this very clearly, that we are committed to what is set out in our IRP. And our IRP is very clear on a mixed energy trajectory for our country, recognizing that fossil fuels are part of the challenge and the problem that is resulting in the emissions that we have. And we need to be alive to that, not only from an economic point of view, but also from a social point of view and a health point of view, because that is the other huge liability that we've got to address. So right now, we know that our path and our journey is to transit to a less emissions dispensation. And fossil fuels contribute to that. But at the same time, we are still reliant on our fossil fuels as we transit. And we cannot wish that away. We cannot airbrush that out of the equation. Fossil fuels are very much, and we've said it very clearly, even to those leaders that we are interacting with. I remember talking to the then Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, and I was saying to him, dear Prime Minister, we have just built two big coal-fired power stations. We've got others that are aging, and we accept that those that are aging, in the end, will reach the end of their life cycle, and they have to be shut down. And we are now in preparation for that eventuality. But at the same time, we've got these others where we've poured billions of rands. I even said to him, we've spent more than 100 billion on each one of them. And what do I do with them? Do I go shut them down? Yes, they break. I can't go and shut them down. So our transition has to take that into account as we now transit to other forms of energy. And that speaks to our mixed energy journey or architecture, because fossil fuels are still very much a part, but with time, we are going to be, and almost without even doing, saying so, we are going to be exiting from those fossil fuels as we now embark on a new direction. So what the Minister of Finance was saying is that there's gas, and gas is being found around our country by a number of players. And one was telling me that they found gas in unimaginable quantities around our country. And what do we do with it? Do we just ignore it or do we utilize it? As it is now, we are using partly gas to fire some of our power stations. So we need to utilize that. Nuclear is very much part of our energy equation as well. Koeberg is, and we're the only nuclear sort of generating power on the continent. Do we shut it down? No, we can't. Do we refurbish it so that it continues a little bit more? Yes, we do, and spend money to do so. Now that talks to the energy mix that we've got to embrace. But all this is within the full equation of moving more and more towards lower gas emissions and getting to a point where we now have zero. And if we accept that, then we do not see any contradiction with what the minister said. And as he said it, I mean, it didn't, collapse the financial markets. And in fact, people even re-rated ESCOM because ESCOM as well. And this is the one thing we've been saying about ESCOM. ESCOM needs to embark on the journey of renewables as well. And we want to strengthen ESCOM to be able to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable N.F. Shivambu.
Thank you very much, Speaker. So at the end of the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, this COP26 in Scotland, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, announced that the group of 7 new colonial countries will allocate the $8.5 billion, which is 120 billion rands, to decommission all coal power stations in South Africa by 2030, which is about 8 or 7 years because this year has come to an end already. And this is despite the fact that our country has spent northward of 350 billion constructing 2 major coal power stations in Medupi and Kusile. And despite the fact that 80% of our electricity in South Africa is from coal, which is the base load of our energy needs, does the intention to decommission all the coal-generated electricity include decommissioning of the still incomplete Medupi and Kusile within the next 7 years? And what will be the base load once we have decommissioned all the coal power stations by 2030? Because that is what your President Biden said we're going to do. Shouldn't we logically look into the clean coal technologies developed by the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, the CSIR, which argues that there is a possibility of having clean coal technologies instead of air transition, which you admittedly have said today that you can't afford because it's going to be worth trillions of rands, and you do not have the trillions of rands because the economy is dwindling. We've got a huge debt burden as a country. That is basically the question of, shouldn't we be looking into the clean coal technologies that the CSIR says could be an alternative for energy generation instead of a misguided and directionless transition that is not going to secure our energy needs as South Africa? Thank you very much.
I thank you, Honorable Shivambu. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Shivambu. You raise a very good and important question about the issue of clean coal technologies. Now, the CSIR is absolutely correct that it is a technology that needs to be looked at and possibly embarked upon. It is in the process and has been looked at, and it has been found, and especially by ESCOM, to be hugely expensive, massively expensive at the current moment, as to be a journey that is so expensive that we couldn't embark on it. However, technologies keep improving. They are improving, and we're finding that as technologies improve, They get better and better and bring about a number of better efficiencies. And Honorable Shibambu, like you, I look forward to technologies that could do that, not only in cleaning coal, but in generating electricity of a base load nature, which can give us electricity available factor, which is very close to 85 to 90% at any given time. So I bank my hopes on new technologies, and these technologies will be right across the board and will cover a number of the energy mix areas that we have, whether it's coal, the fossil fuels rather, hydro and wind, as well as sun. As I was saying earlier, I went to the Northern Cape and saw a slightly different technology. It's renewable, yes, renewable, but at the same time, it uses the sun rays or solar in a different way other than pure solar, the panels. So those are new technologies that are developing on an ongoing basis. So if we are able to find technologies that will make energy generation a lot better, more efficient, cheaper for us, yes, that's the journey that we want to embark upon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable President. Now, question number 23 has been asked by the Honorable P.J. Groenewald. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and honorable members. Broad-based Black economic empowerment, affirmative action, and other transformation policies were essentially introduced to address the imbalances that were created by years of apartheid misrule in our country. Now, while progress has been made in empowering Black people and women in our economy, the benefits of this progress truly have not yet been felt by all South Africans. These policies are not only about justice and redressing historic injustices, they are also necessary for economic growth, for job creation, because they open up the economy to Black people, professionals, entrepreneurs who over the years of apartheid were legislatively, convention-wise prevented to build the capital base that they needed to participate in the economy of their own country. And unless we open up the economy to all, we will never be able to realize our country's economic potential. Because we've had a minority that has been so well empowered and endowed to the exclusion of the majority. Honorable Groenewald, I was saying to someone the other day that in this generation, and I want you to have it clear in your head, in this generation, I do not know many Black people who have inherited wealth from their parents. And yet on the white side in this country, nearly every white person has inherited something from their parents. Now, that already tells you the inequality the inequality that has persisted in this country. So there's been generational poverty. Poverty is what our people have inherited from generation to generation to generation. And that is why you have the majority of South Africans. And you see how it manifests itself. You see it by having the number of indigent families who cannot afford to pay for the services that they need, electricity, water, and all. Why is that so? Because they're poor. They have nothing. Now, these policies were therefore introduced. They were therefore introduced to ensure that Black people do have a meaningful stake in the economy of their country and are able to pass on something other than poverty to the next generation. So in the end, the implementation of transformation and empowerment policies will and must continue without any doubt. Because if they don't, Honorable Groenewald, how do we address this anomaly that exists in our country? And how in the end do we ensure that there is an inclusive economy? And talking about an inclusive economy means that we must get as many people participating meaningfully from a skills point of view, from a wealth creation point of view, from a job participation point of view. And all South Africans must participate, remembering our past. Where do we come from? You know, I was the General Secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers. Now, on the mines, you had this law that said, it was in the Mines and Works Act, the law that said only white people could become certificated miners. And Black people, Black workers whom we organized, who did the rock drilling, the charging of the holes, the blasting, the cleaning of the haulages, but particularly your guys, the guys who actually charged the holes. And all the white miner would do, after they've connected all these holes, he would come and have a look and press a button and it detonates. And by law, that person was privileged and he earned almost 20 times more than all the others. Now that was exclusion. That was exclusion because a particular law had been crafted in this parliament of the old, to advantage just white mine workers. And the Black mine workers who did all the work were prevented to participate in the glue. So what happened to them? They continued to be poor in the rural areas of our country. And in the end, they ended up with nothing but silicosis and other diseases. And white mine workers were so privileged. They lived in the suburbs. They had great salaries, cars and houses and what have you. Now, if you look at that historic imbalance, surely everyone must agree that we've got to correct that. Surely everyone must agree. Now, Honorable Groenewald, it is this that needs to be addressed. And as it was addressed in the past to empower a particular race, we need to correct that and empower those who were not given those opportunities in the past. That's just the bare simplicity of the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Act. And I know that you have a particular view. You have a particular view on this, and I would really like you to sit down and consider all these things. And I'll give you another good example. You know, ownership of property. Ownership of property was denied to Black people, particularly in your town areas and all that. And in any event, 87% of the land was just reserved for white people and 13% to Black people. How do we deal with that? Do we leave it as it is, or do we do something about it? Now, by law, Black people were prevented from owning land. Now, all those policies of the past, they have to be addressed. And all we have come up with is to say, let us transform what we had in the past. Let us have a more inclusive economy. Let us include every South African to participate in a meaningful way in the economy of their own country. And that is just the simplicity of what broad-based Black economic empowerment is. And I hope that one day you do reach a situation where you are able to understand, because the laws are aimed at ensuring that Black people, women, youth, people with disabilities are given an opportunity for participation in the economy of their own country. And right now, what else are we doing? We are saying in government, and this is an affirmative action move, we're saying 40% of government procurement must be set aside for women-owned and women-led businesses. And when we say so, and I want you to listen to this carefully, when we say so, even white women-owned companies come to the fore and say, we want to participate, and they will not be excluded. The majority, of course, are going to be Black women-owned companies. That must be favored. So it is a policy that is meant to affirm the women of our country. It is meant to strengthen their participation in the economy. And all those reasons and parameters are what I hope you'll be able to understand and accept one day. I look forward to having a cup of tea with you so that we can discuss this in full. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable PJ Groenewald.
Geachte Speaker, through you, Honorable President, I accept the invitation for a cup of tea. The sooner, the better, because you have misperceptions as far as what I do understand when it comes to apartheid. But, Honorable President, in my limited time of 2 minutes, why then, in your campaigning for the 2019 election, you said in the Western Cape, you wish you could tie the white young people to a tree in South Africa to prevent them, I can show it to you, to prevent them leaving the country. So in election time, you want them, creating the impression we need your skills. I have heard only today, many times the words skills. Now, Honorable President, I have said it numerous times. When it comes to affirmative action, the white people do not ask for special treatment. They do not ask for preferential treatment. They only ask for equal treatment. And they do have skills to build South Africa. Let me say this to you. The people, and specifically the white people
honorable
who is
members.
in South Africa wants to build South Africa. But with your policies, you draw a line through it. Honorable Chairperson, or Honorable Speaker, throughout since the mid-90s, the Freedom Front Plus has said that affirmative action and Black economic empowerment is going to destroy the economy of South Africa. What we need is skilled people who wants to build South Africa, and there should be only one criteria, and that is merit. Forget about color. Think about merit. Now, it took 25 years and a Zondo Commission to determine that the way you did cadre deployment under the smokescreen of affirmative action and destroyed the economy under the smokescreen of Black economic empowerment, to say it is unconstitutional. Now, my follow-up, Honorable President, is in March this year, Transnet announced that they will do away with BEE to ensure that they fulfill their operational requirements and can obtain their economic goals. Are you going to allow it also with other state-owned
Time is
enterprises? Thank you.
over, honorable member. Thank you. Thank you, honorable member. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Groenewald, yes, I do long and hope that we will, and seriously, have an opportunity, and possibly when I'm next in Cape Town, we should be able to do so. Maybe even have a dinner or lunch and have a discussion, a proper discussion on this. Because I just want to correct this. Yes, I do. If I had the possibility to tie white South Africans, young people, to a tree so that they don't leave the country, I will still repeat that statement because we want them here. They are South Africans. And that is why the policy of our country, of the organization I lead, is that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, and we want them to be here as well. Now, having said that, Black economic empowerment is not the enemy of meritocracy. It isn't. And the two are not mutually exclusive. It is important that, yes, as we foster transformation, as we foster the empowerment of Black people, the women of our country and so forth, we do look at merit. But what we need to focus on is transformation that is inclusive, that will include all the people of our country, because we come from a horrible past, and we must admit that. A past that said a certain race cannot be included. So we are saying include everyone. And yes, look at a number of factors, including merit, including regions where people come from, including the gender and all that. So all those are considerations that need to be taken on board. But transformation must be at the center of it all. And the twin sister or brother will be the others, merit, as well as ensuring that we have skilled people to do the jobs that need to be done to take our economy forward. Now, in the past, even if you were a skilled Black person, even if you were super skilled, you were excluded by the law that was in place. And now we are saying, no, you cannot be excluded. You will be given consideration as part of the transformation architecture that we have in mind. So I'll have lunch with you when I next come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, the Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable TV Mashele.
Mochaviseki President, BEE xikan'we na affirmative action I switirhisiwa emavokweni ya mfumo ku tisa na ku antswisa vutomi bya vaakatiko va Afrika-Dzonga. leswi tsariweke ka Freedom Charter xikan'we na the Ready to Govern document of the African National Congress. President, mi nga hi hlamusela hi laha BEE xikan'we na affirmative action swi nga tirhisiwa hi kona ku tisa ku hluvuka na ku antswisa vutomi bya vaakatiko va Afrika-Dzonga, ngopfungopfu vamanana na vantshwa. Nakambe President, how are we going to use these transformation policies to make sure that Black people are able to access Orania, that is a little enclave in South Africa?
I thank you, Honorable Member. The President.
Geachte Speaker, can I just mention, and you did
Is
say.
that a point of
that
order?
My point of order, I just want to put on record,
Yes, Honorable Member.
listen and get wise.
Order.
You did say that there's no translation services. I would very much would like to hear or heard what the honorable member said, but I couldn't, so.
Honorable, order.
But we also don't hear you when you speak in Afrikaans.
Okay, honorable members, please. Honorable members. I understand. Can you wait for me to rule on the matter? I gave you information earlier on, which is that those of you who are on the virtual platform, it is easy for them to access translation, even though limited. However, those who are here in the chamber, it is true that there is a problem. Currently, there are two sittings. There's the NCOP and the National Assembly sitting. And therefore, there are challenges in relation to our translation services. But this is a matter which is being dealt with, which is being attended to, and hopefully in our next session, we will not have such a problem. Now, in other words, Honorable Member, Honorable Grunewald, I plead for your patience that in this instance, actually, there are many of us who are very confused about the language issue now because there is no limited translation. So our sincere apologies, but allow the, Then I will therefore allow the member who was, the president was responding, I think, to a question from Honorable Mashele. Thank you.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. Honorable Mashele, anta lava ku ri ni hlamula hi Xitsonga. Mara ku nga ku vanhu vo tala a va twisisi kahle loko hi bula hi marimi a hina hi ku translation hi nga ku a yi tirhi kahle la. So ni ta bula hi Xilungu ke. Now, the process of Black economic empowerment and transformation in general is so important. And you ask, what is it that we're doing? We've embarked on a number of processes, but in the economy, we are focusing on, yes, empowering, as I said, women to be preferred when it comes to procurement up to 40%. We've embarked on a Black industrialist program that is leading to the creation of Black industrialists. And I've heard some people have been very critical of this, but it is a program that, apart from getting more Black people to be participants at the height of our economy, there's also a job creation element that is in the process of development in that regard. And with this, we are seeing a great deal of progress. And progress obviously will take time because apartheid and colonialism took more than 300 years to disempower our people. And we must not expect that it's going to be an overnight success with these policies that we have embarked upon. And over time, we'll be able to look back and see that indeed, we've made great strides in the empowerment of our people. And as it is now, as we see it with many Black people participating in a meaningful way in the economy, that is the progress that we want to see. You mentioned Orania. I've never been to Orania, but I heard Honorable Steenhuisen expressing a wish that the DA should run Orania one day. So, yes, yeah, no. We run it as the ANC, but you are expressing, the DA is expressing a wish that they should run it. And I've never been there, and maybe the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, having been there, will be able to give you insights about what happens in Orania. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Honorable the President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, I don't think that there's anybody in this House who could dispute or argue the President's exposition of how abhorrent and damaging apartheid's race-based policies were. And that's not the argument today, nor whatever the intentions of BE were. But let's look at what is practically happening on the ground. The Zondo Commission showed that BE has been central to corruption in South Africa, be it the 14 billion PPE corruption during COVID or the billions stolen through Eskom. A recent example, one of your own nephews, whose company scored contracts worth 381 million rand from Gauteng Hospital. And you write that it's not being felt by the majority of our citizens because BE only benefits ANC-connected cronies. And it does so at the expense of everybody else, particularly the 35 million Black South Africans who remain trapped in poverty. They suffer shoddy service delivery because of the inflated prices government must pay to BE middlemen. The 280,000 rand broom at Eskom is an example. Now, last week, Eskom board member Mteto Inyati spoke truth to power, and he said that BE will have to go if there's to be any chance of ending South Africa's electricity crisis. But why are you still clinging to this failing policy and not focusing on an empowerment policy that lifts people out of poverty and into opportunity, that is broad-based, that's not race-based, that focuses on poverty and not making BE fat cats, but lifting the millions of Black people in this country who have no opportunity at all, out of poverty and into opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Steenhuisen concedes that indeed what happened in our past was exclusionary, it excluded Black people, and the policies that were pursued in the past were damaging, not only to the economy of our country, but to the people of our country. What BEE seeks to do and to achieve. And let's be clear, the whole concept of BEE is enshrined in our constitution. It is a constitutional imperative. There's just no way any one of us can run away from that reality and dispute the fact that the constitution is very clear. There was no equality in the past. The constitution says there must be equality. The opportunities that were there in the past were only available to a certain group, and you now say cronies. And I don't want to be disrespectful to the white people of our country and reduce them to by any term. But the policies of the past favored them. It privileged them, and many white people do concede that. They do say, yes, we were privileged over and above the Black people, the majority of people in our country. So that is a given. And now that being a given, we've got to correct that. And we correct it by applying the terms of our constitution, not what is in Honorable Steenhuisen's head. No. And we address it by saying, and I was asked to lead the Black Economic Empowerment Commission, and we came out with a report that said, you've got to broaden economic empowerment. It must not be the exclusive right of certain few people. So that is why the act, now you keep saying my nephew, I don't even know this gentleman. And so let's not even get there. I don't know him. So
We've had enough of this
I never met him. So in the end, the act says broad-based Black economic empowerment. And it focuses on the broadness and inclusivity. And where it has been used to just focus on a few, that has been the wrong application. It has been the wrong application, but its intention gets its origins and its foundations from our constitution. Our constitution is about broadness, it's about all South Africans. And I must insist that let us not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let us focus on how we apply. Let's focus on how we apply broad-based economic empowerment so as to achieve precisely what Honorable Steenhuisen is saying. Now, he wants policies that we embark upon to benefit the majority. And he even says 35 million poor South Africans. It's much more than that, Honorable Steenhuisen. We've got to focus on all South Africans and make sure that our economy is so transformative as to include everyone. And if we can do that, and I'd like to call upon Honorable Steenhuisen that we do so. You see, the implementation of our constitution has to be a collective act by all of us. And I also want to invite him to be part of the solution rather than be part of those who sit on the sidelines and criticize. So I invite you, I don't know what I invite you to, maybe half a tea, maybe to a drink. Let's have a drink together, then we can discuss this. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Honorable the President.
Drink, we have a drink.
Order. Order. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable NLS Gwangwa.
Thank you very much, Speaker. President, wouldn't you say that to a large extent, part of the problem is that we've been sold a superficial notion of reconciliation without marrying it with transformation? And now that we are trying to implement transformation, people want to remind us that all that we should do is to be content with feeling all warm and cozy and kumbaya without doing anything about the material conditions of our people. President Lyndon Johnson, in 1965, President once said, talking about the importance of affirmative action policies as they were necessary to achieve true equality in America, I said, but freedom is not enough. You do not wipe away scars of centuries by saying now you are free to go where you want, do as you desire, choose the leaders you please. You do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bring him up to the starting line of a race and then say, you are free to compete with all others and still justly believe that you've been completely fair. President, quoting him again, that thus it is not enough to open gates of opportunity. All our citizens must have the ability to walk through those gates. I like the last part where he said, we seek not just legal equity, but human ability. Not just equality as a right and theory, as my colleagues are saying and suggesting here, but equality as a fact and equality as a result. That is what South Africa requires. Perhaps, President, what you should be addressing is exactly the gaps in implementation which have given a wrong perception to what was a well-intentioned policy to make sure that it's broad-based. But also, as we talk about this, driving this transformative agenda, perhaps what we should say is to call to order all the Black people who are hypocritical, who have been empowered by these policies. Now that they're empowered, they think they have the right to tell us not to empower those who were previously disadvantaged. It's the first thing we must say. And the last point, President, you know, I like affirmative action in Afrikaans is what? Regstelende actie. Pardon my pronunciation, I'm Xhosa. But it's corrective action in English if you do direct translation. So what we're doing is corrective action, correcting what was wrong. And we must remember that if not the only country, one of the few countries in the world which have had to adopt policies to affirm the majority, it's usually the opposite. Countries adopt affirmative action policies to affirm the minority. Now the minority is saying, don't affirm your people. Leave them to fend for themselves. It can't
Thank
be.
you, Honorable Kwangwa. Thank you. The
Bazwile.
Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Kwangwa did not raise a question, and I agree with him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. The last question has been asked by the Honorable C.M. Phiri. C.M. Phiri, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The impact of travel restrictions and lockdown measures in nearly every region of the world has led to a significant drop in airline activities and revenues. As the industry recovers, the African Continental Free Trade Area presents enormous opportunities for access to new markets in Africa for goods and services that originate from our own country. Much of this increased commerce between African countries in the end will depend on air travel. To strategically position our country to be in a position to reap the potential benefits of the AfCFTA, the Department of Transport has commissioned the development of air freight strategy for South Africa. Now, during the COVID pandemic, the air freight market surpassed the passenger market. We were transporting more goods than we were transporting people. By so doing, this offered much needed revenue that effectively cushioned the domestic aviation sector from total collapse. At the end and at the heart of this proposed strategy is the quest to find ways of being able to harness the growth of air freight to enable aviation entities such as the Airports Company of South Africa, Air Traffic Navigation Services, and the South African Civil Aviation Authority to expand their footprint. South Africa is a signatory of the Single African Air Transport Market, which is a flagship project of the African Union, particularly in relation to Agenda 2063. South Africa is among the 35 AU member states that have subscribed to the solemn commitment to unconditionally implement the Yamoussoukro Declaration on the Liberalization of Air Services and the Single African Transport Market. Now, full implementation of the Single Air Transport Market across the continent will provide a great opportunity for our country particularly its airlines, including South African Airways, to expand regional linkages and to contribute to our goal of an integrated and prosperous continent. I thank you.
I thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable CM Piri.
Ndi khou livhuwa mulangadzulu nṋe ndi muvenda ndi khou ya Tshipembe nda ndi khou humbela uri vha songo ndrwa nga matombo ndi a resha mulise singo ḽa Ramabulana mukololo ndo livhuwa phindulo yavho mara fhedziha mukololo wa Tshivhasa ndo vha ndi khou ri sa ezwi vhunzhi ha mabupo apo na ngauri a khou aluwa ri tshi sedza kha shango ḽashu ḽa Afrika Tshipembe na mazhango oṱhe ane ra vha khao kana ane ra vha na vhudavhidzani nao, nda ndi khou ri a ri khou vhona hu nga vha no pfufhifhadza kana na u tsitsa mitengo mabupo a khou hana a tshi aluwa kana hu tshi khou vha na mitengo ine ya vha i uri a i khou swikelelea kha vhathu vhashu. Mara mbudziso yanga fhedzi muhulisei ndi ya uri yo u thoma ndi ya uri ndi afhio maga ane a vha uri a hone kha muvhuso uri a sedze kana a konise uri ri tsitse hedzi mbadelo dzine ya vha uri ndi dza nṱhesa. Tsha vhuvhili ndi uri muvhuso u khou ita mini u vhona uri mitengo ya nṱha ya mabupo aya a khou nambaho a tshi ya nṱha nṱha u ḓo itisa hani sa hezwi ikonomi yashu i khou tea u aluwa mara fhedzi ngori magavhelo a hone ndi a nṱhesa i khou kandeledza vhane vha khou lingedza uri vha aluwe na vhoriṋe na kha mabindu maṱuku. Ndi khou livhuwa mukolelo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And ndiyalivhuwa khaladzi kha mbudziso ine ya vha khou i vhea. Ndi mbudziso ya vhuṱhogwa nga maanḓa. Fhedzi ndi ḓo fhindula nga tshikhuwa ngauri ri khou itela uri vhathu vhanzhi vha kone u pfhesesa zwavhuḓi uri ri khou amba nga mini hapa. You raise an important question, and a question that is affecting many other people around the world. As I was saying earlier, prices of nearly everything have gone up, including air travel prices. We're finding that it has become extremely expensive to travel from place to place. The air tickets prices have gone up astronomically, and they are largely driven by the rise in prices of jet fuel, a rise in prices of logistics, as all these products have to be transported from one place to another, and rise in prices also of refinement of all these products. So the whole world is facing great difficulty. And it also leads to the rise and the fall of airline companies. Around the world, airline companies get formed and in no time they collapse. And they collapse under the heavy burden of rising jet fuel prices and other operating costs as well. Now, you ask a question, what is government doing in this regard? Of course, we want as government prices to be normalized and to be stabilized, and we don't want our people to be subjected to continued rising prices. It was to this end also that government has pumped close on to 40 billion rand in our own national airline, which has faced enormous challenges and difficulties over a number of years, to a point where it was brought to near collapse, total collapse, and we had to salvage that through bringing in, as the deal is now being consummated or being finalized, a strategic equity partner. And the support has been there. But there's always been the complaint that we really are supporting an elite that travels, by air. But you also, the foundations of your question also focus on freight. Freight is one area where we've seen enormous growth. And that is why my initial input to your question focused on the opportunities that lie ahead for freight transportation on our continent. And I find it very interesting that a number of our provinces are positioning themselves to be the freight hubs in our country. I went to the Free State. They want to see themselves as a freight hub. In Limpopo as well, they want to see themselves as a freight hub, because the opportunities that beckon with the African Continental Free Trade Area are quite ginormous, if one can use that term. They're enormous, and we need to capture them. As our manufacturers manufacture goods here, they need to be transported. And I do believe that through that, we may well see prices of freight transportation coming down. When the Prime Minister of Spain was here, he said they receive up to 87 million tourists. There was a time when 2 years or 1 year ago, and I just said if they could transfer just a quarter of those to our country, we would be very delighted. So with more air travel, and I think it could lead to some reduction of prices as we get more and more volume. And as our country becomes more and more attractive to tourist travel, we should be able to get to that point. I hope that is satisfactory to you. Ndolivu.
Thank you very much, the Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, you said be part of the solution. And on my first question, you responded saying you wanted an independent commission to look at developing the ministerial handbook. So I'm very proud to deliver to you a private member's bill that was tabled in Parliament 2 days ago by Dr. Schreiber, which does precisely that. Now, we know you're going to be very busy the next month, so the work's been done for you. There it is. Mr. President, it's indeed important for domestic airlines to expand regionally, because not all of us can hop onto a helicopter and attend branch meetings. But domestic airlines are a crucial way to a mode of public transport. And that mode of transport is in crisis. One of the reasons is because South African Airways put the private Comair out of business because it didn't pay them the 790 million rand that it owed them. And so my question to you is simple. Do you think it's fair that a government airline that survives on taxpayer bailouts should be allowed to destroy a private sector airline and then receive further bailouts from government? Thank you.
I thank you, the Honorable Member. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Steenhuisen, I must confess that I'm not aware of a national airline seeking to destroy a private airline and then rely on bailouts from the state. The airline market is quite competitive, very, very competitive. And that is why in my initial answer, I said, airlines get off the ground, they fly, and then you often hear that they have gone bust. Not only in this country, well, some crash, not only in this country, in the United States as well, which you would say has more airlines than possibly any other country. And Nigeria is one other country. Each time, one lands in Nigeria, you see a number of airlines. And next time you come, you hear that some of them have gone bust. So the airline business in my book, it's a very risky business. And it leads to boom and bust. And I would not know the details of what you're talking about Comair having been destroyed by SAA. I doubt if SAA would ever have had the intention. I think if there was cross sort of loans or debt or whatever between airlines, that is a matter that they should resolve. I mean, the courts are there to deal with that, and there are a number of other avenues that should deal with that. So I'm not really au fait with what has happened there, but I doubt that a national airline would have such an intention in a very competitive market like the airline business. And even now, I mean, it's a joy to see that there are quite a number of airlines that have mushroomed in our own country. You often hear one was being launched the other day or will be launched soon. The other one was launched a few months ago, and they will boom, and then they will face challenges and difficulties that are often not their own fault, but that are the vagaries of the market, because it is a very difficult market. I'm sorry I couldn't be more helpful to you. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Honorable the President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable S. Tambo.
Thank you very much, Speaker. President, the basis of regional and continental integration must be premised on the capacity to build transportation infrastructure that connects countries in the region and across the continent. There must also be reliable means of transportation by road, rail, and by air. South Africa has completely collapsed the rail system under your administration, and it is also your administration that oversaw a rapid destruction of many airlines, including SAA and SA Express Airways. How do you plan for South Africa to participate fully in regional and continental developmental initiatives when we have no capacity to transport goods by rail, when the road network is decaying, and when your administration has killed a dependable state airline in South African Airways? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Tambo. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Tando. As you heard me say, the airline business is a very risky business. And I know of no government that would intentionally destroy its own airline. That, to me, just boggles the mind because it's not what has been in our objectives. But then again, you are absolutely correct that our rail has faced challenges. It hasn't really collapsed as you assume it has. It is facing challenges, and these are challenges that we are alive to. On the passenger rail side, Minister of Transport is in the process of addressing those challenges. We know what PRASA was exposed to, and through the state capture years, the rail passenger line industry was negatively impacted. And as regards rail generally, Transnet still has great capacity. And obviously, with further investments, we'll be able to reposition Transnet. On the roads, we still have really good roads in our country, much as a number of them, as I've said in the past, are littered with potholes. But our main artery roads are still good, and we have a very good company in Sanral, an agency that was set up to construct our roads and is busy doing so with the assistance that it has received from the state now in relation to its debt. It should be able to rise to greater heights. So our road infrastructure is going to improve even greatly. And remember, we're not the only country in the world that is facing challenges when it comes to road infrastructure. A number of other developed economies face such challenges, and our rail is being addressed. And as to our air travel, that's a competitive market, and we're pleased that a number of airlines are coming to the fore. And as I said, because it's such a risky business, they will rise and they will decline as well. And those are due to the vagaries of the market and obviously the efforts that we have made to strengthen, to reposition SAA and up to the point where we have stopped the total decline or collapse and destruction of SAA by bringing in an SEP partner, SEP partner, is really going to reposition SAA. And the government will continue being a shareholder, albeit at 49%, but we will have the golden share. And the brand name will continue, and we hope that SAA will be repositioned completely. It is already showing signs of that because it is trading rather well at the moment. And we just need to bed down the transaction so that everything can carry on with SAA. Thank you very much, Honorable Smith.
I thank you, the Honorable the President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable M. Sengwa.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon to all colleagues. Mr. President, I'm glad you've raised the issue of the strategic equity partner, because I think we need to go back to those basics first before we take SAA to the world as its hallmark used to be. And so the question, Mr. President, is on what business logical basis was SAA sold, or at least the 51% stake sold, when SAA has been unaudited for the past 4 years? And more pointedly then, Mr. President, is how much was the 51% stake sold for? Your ascension to office, Mr. President, the refrain was transparency. And the fact that the SAA Takatso deal has been behind a veil of secrecy does not inspire any confidence, nor does it bode well for certainty insofar as future air travel is concerned. So, Mr. President, SAA has not been audited for the past 4 years, yet government went ahead and sold it. So I really want to know, how much did you sell it for? And when will government be transparent wholeheartedly and wholly on this transaction? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable Sengwa. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Flengwa. Your quest for transparency is understandable, and it is what I would like to see happening, because SAA is a state-owned entity, and therefore we do need to put the various cards, if one can call it that, on the table so that the people of our country can understand, and also understand what its future is going to be and what is involved in the full mechanics of this deal. So that is something that has been before even our courts, and that is something that is now before our Competition Commission. And we will indeed get to the point where we will be able to outline more fully exactly what the terms of the transaction are. We discussed the whole process in cabinet just a day ago, and we got an update, and we will seek to have further updates so that those updates can also be shared with our people as regards the terms of the transaction, what role is the SEP going to play, and some of that detail has already been put out, and also the pricing that has been arrived at, what the value of SAA was before this, and also the financials. Now, quite frankly, SAA was totally bankrupt. completely bankrupt. And those are some of the facts that need to be put on the table so that everyone does get to understand. Without this transaction, I can say without any equivocation, SAA will go into liquidation because its liabilities far exceed even its own assets. And in the end, what are SAA's assets? And that should also be put on the table. Its main assets are the routes that it has, not even the planes. Some people think that SAA owns all the planes and so forth. They are leased. It doesn't really even own that. The value is the routes that it has to take passengers all over the world. So I will say that, yes, that does need to be shared so that we get full understanding, because there is some notion that this deal is being struck in total secrecy and there's a lot of funny things that are happening. And I think people need to be alive to the fact that we are dealing with a company that was totally bankrupt in a messy situation. For a company like that not to be able to produce financial statements for a period of 4 years, and you would know better as the chair of our SCOPA, just means that this was just chaos. And that chaos translated itself into its commercial viability, into its finances. And unfortunately, we reached a stage where we just kept bankrolling SAA on an ongoing basis. And that now will come to an end when this transaction is finalized or consummated. So, Honorable Hlengwa, I do think that, yes, the quest for transparency is a fair one. And so happens that with transactions of this nature that are done commercially between company to company, there's always the confidentiality clauses and all that. But we need to address it politically and say, what does it mean to the actual shareholders who are the people of South Africa to a transaction like this? So we will address the issue of transparency. Honorable Speaker, I hope Honorable Hlengwa will be satisfied with that. Thank you very much.
Not at all, but we will talk, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I thank you, the Honorable the President. That concludes questions to the President.
Go home now.
Yes, you've worked hard. Honorable members, that concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned.
Long live the President.
Long live.
Amen.